The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the bustling streets of Lagos. Aisha Adeyemi, a young woman in her mid-20s, hurried through the marketplace, her mind occupied with thoughts of her upcoming engagement party. As she turned a corner into a quieter alley, a sudden movement caught her attention. Before she could react, a strong arm wrapped around her waist, and a hand covered her mouth. Panic surged through her as she struggled against her captor's grip. "Don't make a sound," a voice whispered urgently in her ear. "I don't want to hurt you." The man's voice was steady but laced with desperation. Aisha's heart pounded in her chest as she was dragged into a waiting car. The car finally came to a stop in front of an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of the city. Aisha was led inside, her captor's grip never loosening. The dimly lit interior smelled of dust and neglect, adding to her growing sense of dread. The first night in captivity was a sleepless one for Aisha. The unfamiliar surroundings, the dim light filtering through the dusty window, and the constant presence of Chidi left her restless. She tried to find comfort in the hope that someone would soon notice her absence and search for her. The morning light brought a slight sense of relief, but Aisha's mind remained clouded with fear and uncertainty. Chidi brought her a simple breakfast of bread and water. His expression was guarded, yet Aisha could sense the turmoil beneath his stoic facade. "Thank you," she murmured, accepting the food. She hoped to find a way to reach out to him, to understand the depths of his desperation. Chidi sat on the other side of the room, his eyes avoiding hers. The silence between them was heavy, but Aisha was determined to break it. "Tell me about your sister," she said gently. Chidi glanced at her, surprised by her question. He hesitated before speaking. "Her name is Ifeoma. She's been sick for months, and the doctors say she needs an expensive surgery. I've exhausted all my resources. I don't know what else to do." Aisha listened intently, her heart aching for the man and his sister. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said sincerely. "But kidnapping me isn't the answer. There must be another way." Chidi's eyes hardened. "I've already made my choice." Days turned into a week, and Aisha and Chidi began to fall into a reluctant routine. Despite the circumstances, Aisha couldn't help but feel a growing sense of empathy for Chidi. She saw glimpses of his humanity, his genuine love for his sister, and the immense burden he carried. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, Aisha sat near the window, lost in thought. Chidi watched her from a distance, the weight of his actions pressing heavily on him. "You don't have to keep me here," Aisha said softly, breaking the silence. "I can help you find another way to save Ifeoma." Chidi's expression softened for the first time. He approached her cautiously, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you help me after everything I've done?" Aisha looked into his eyes, searching for the man behind the desperate act. "Because I believe in second chances. And I believe you're not a bad person, Chidi. Just a desperate one." For a moment, the walls Chidi had built around himself seemed to crumble. He lowered his gaze, guilt and gratitude warring within him. "I don't know how to make this right," he admitted. Aisha reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "We'll figure it out together," she promised. As the days passed, an unexpected bond began to form between them. Their conversations grew more personal, their silences more comfortable. Aisha's understanding and compassion started to chip away at Chidi's resolve. One afternoon while sharing a meal, Chidi revealed more about his life, his dreams, and the burdens he carried. Aisha listened, offering words of comfort and encouragement. Slowly, she felt a change in him, a flicker of hope where there had once been only despair. But their fragile connection was soon to be tested. The outside world continued to turn, unaware of the unlikely friendship blooming within the confines of the abandoned building. And as they began to plan for an escape, the reality of their situation loomed ever larger. The journey ahead was uncertain. But Aisha and Chidi knew they had to find a way out. Together. Their growing bond would be their strength, guiding them through the darkness that had brought them together. Days turned into weeks, and Aisha's presence brought a strange sense of calm to the abandoned building. Chidi's hardened exterior softened with each passing day, as he shared more about his life and his sister Ifeoma's condition. Despite the circumstances, Aisha found herself feeling safer in his company, an odd trust developing between captor and captive. One evening, as the sun set and the room filled with a warm golden glow, Chidi brought Aisha her dinner. She noticed the furrow in his brow, the worry etched deeply into his features. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. Chidi sighed, sitting down across from her. "I can't keep you here forever, Aisha. The ransom demands have been sent, but there's no guarantee it will work. I don't want to risk your safety any longer." "We need to find a way out of this," she agreed. "Together." Chidi looked at her, hope flickering in his eyes. "What do you suggest?" Aisha thought for a moment, her mind racing. "We need to gather information about Ifeoma's condition and see if there are any organizations or charities that can help. There must be a way to get the money legally." Chidi nodded slowly. "I've been too focused on quick solutions. Maybe you're right." They spent the next few days planning their escape. Chidi managed to get his hands on an old second-hand laptop, and Aisha began researching tirelessly. She found several organizations that could potentially help with Ifeoma's medical bills, but they needed to act quickly. One night, while they were poring over the information, Chidi looked at Aisha with a mix of gratitude and something deeper. "I never imagined I'd find someone like you in the midst of all this," he said quietly. Aisha smiled, touched by his words. "And I never thought I'd find a friend in my captor." Their plan slowly took shape. They would leave the abandoned building under cover of darkness and head to a trusted contact Chidi had in Ibadan. Someone who could help them get in touch with the organizations Aisha had found. It was a risky plan, but it was their best chance. As the day of their planned escape approached, the tension between them grew. They knew that once they left the safety of the building, anything could happen. But their bond had become their strength, and they were determined to see it through. The night of their escape arrived. They packed their few belongings, ready to face the uncertain journey ahead. As they stood at the door, Aisha turned to Chidi, her heart pounding. "Are you ready?" Chidi took a deep breath, nodding. "Yes. Let's go." They slipped out into the night, the cool air a stark contrast to the warmth of the building they left behind. The streets were quiet, and they moved swiftly, keeping to the shadows. Every step brought them closer to freedom, and yet the danger loomed ever larger. Their journey had only just begun, and the challenges they faced were far from over. But as they moved forward, hand in hand, Aisha and Chidi knew they were stronger together. The darkness that had brought them together was slowly giving way to the light of their newfound bond. The night air was cool as Aisha and Chidi made their way through the silent streets of Lagos. Their footsteps echoed softly, a reminder of the risks they were taking. The city that once felt familiar now seemed filled with hidden dangers. Yet with each step, their resolve grew stronger. They reached the bus station just before dawn. Chidi's contact in Ibadan, a man named Amaka, was their only hope. He had connections that could help them navigate the legal avenues for Ifeoma's treatment. The journey to Ibadan would be long, but it was a risk they had to take. As they boarded the bus, Aisha glanced at Chidi, seeing the tension in his jaw. "We'll get through this," she whispered, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. Chidi nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. I know, I don't want anything to happen to you. The bus ride was uneventful but filled with anticipation. Aisha leaned her head against the window, watching the landscape change as they left Lagos behind. Her mind wandered to her family, who were undoubtedly worried sick. She hoped they would understand her actions once she was safe. Chidi sat beside her, his thoughts occupied with Ifeoma and the uncertainty of their plan. He had always been the protector in his family, and the weight of his decisions bore heavily on him. Yet, with Aisha by his side, he felt a glimmer of hope that they might find a way out. When they arrived in Ibadan, the city's bustling streets were a stark contrast to the desolation they had left behind. They navigated through the crowds, careful to avoid drawing attention. Chidi led Aisha to a small, nondescript building on the outskirts of town. This was where Amaka lived. Chidi knocked on the door, and after a tense moment, it opened to reveal a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern expression. Amaka's eyes softened when he saw Chidi. Chidi, it's been a while, he said, his voice gruff but warm.
Chidi introduced Aisha and they quickly explained their situation. Amaka listened intently, his brow furrowing with concern. You've put yourselves in a dangerous position, he said. But I'll help you. Ifeoma's condition is serious and will need to act fast. Amaka made some calls, and soon they had an appointment with a local charity that specialized in medical aid. As they waited, Aisha and Chidi felt a renewed sense of hope. This was their chance to make things right. Later that evening, Amaka prepared a simple meal for them. As they sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Aisha felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in weeks. The bond between her and Chidi grew stronger, a testament to the unlikely friendship that had blossomed between them. As night fell, Aisha found herself alone with Chidi on the small balcony. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the world beyond their troubles. Thank you for everything, Chidi said, his voice sincere. I don't know what I would have done without you. Aisha smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. We're in this together, Chidi. We'll find a way. Their moment was interrupted by a call from Amaka. The charity had agreed to meet them the next morning. It was a small victory, but it brought a sense of relief. As they prepared for bed, Aisha and Chidi knew the road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but they also knew they had each other, and that was enough to face whatever came next.
The next morning, Aisha and Chidi woke early, filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Amaka drove them to the charity's office, a modest building bustling with activity. The organization, Healing Hands Nigeria, had a reputation for helping those in need, and it was their best chance to get Ifeoma the medical care she desperately needed. As they entered the office, a kind-faced woman greeted them. Good morning, I'm Ngozi, the coordinator. Please come in, she said, ushering them into a small, cozy office. They sat down, and Chidi began to explain Ifeoma's situation, his voice wavering with emotion. Ngozi listened carefully, her eyes filled with compassion. We understand your plight, Chidi. Our organization has helped many families like yours. We'll need to see Ifeoma's medical records and conduct an assessment. But I believe we can assist you. Aisha felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. Thank you, Ngozi, she said, her voice steady. We're willing to do whatever it takes to help Ifeoma. Ngozi nodded. We'll start the process immediately. Meanwhile, I suggest you find a safe place to stay. The authorities might still be looking for you, Aisha. Chidi and Aisha exchanged a glance. They knew that staying in Ibadan posed its own risks, but they had little choice. Amaka offered them a room in his home, and they gratefully accepted. Over the next few days, they worked closely with Healing Hands Nigeria, providing all the necessary documentation and arranging for Ifeoma's transfer to a specialized hospital in Lagos. The process was exhausting, but it brought them closer to their goal. One evening, as they sat in Emeka's living room, Aisha noticed the exhaustion in Chidi's eyes. She reached out, taking his hand in hers. "We're almost there," she said softly. "Ifeoma will get the help she needs." Chidi squeezed her hand, his gratitude evident. "I couldn't have done this without you, Aisha. I'm sorry for everything." Aisha shook her head, her eyes filled with understanding. "You did what you thought you had to do. Now, we're finding a better way." Their bond had deepened, built on trust and shared hardships. They had faced the darkness together, and now they were on the brink of finding the light. The day finally came for Ifeoma's transfer. Chidi's heart raced as he watched the ambulance pull up to Emeka's home. The medical team, arranged by Healing Hands Nigeria, efficiently prepared Ifeoma for the journey. She was weak, but her eyes held a spark of hope. "Aisha, Chidi, thank you," Ifeoma whispered, her voice frail but grateful. Aisha smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "We'll be with you every step of the way, Ifeoma." The ambulance ride back to Lagos was tense but filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Ifeoma's condition was critical, but they had faith in the medical team and the support of Healing Hands Nigeria. When they arrived at the hospital, Ifeoma was immediately taken into surgery. Chidi and Aisha waited in the hospital's sterile waiting room, their hands intertwined. The hours felt like an eternity, each moment filled with anxiety and hope. Finally, the surgeon emerged, his expression tired but reassuring. "The surgery was successful. Ifeoma will need time to recover, but she's going to be okay." Chidi let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, tears streaming down his face. Aisha and Chidi watched over Ifeoma as she began her recovery in the hospital. Her frail body seemed almost lost in the stark white bed, but her spirit was strong. The nurses and doctors of Healing Hands Nigeria took good care of her, and Chidi and Aisha took turns staying by her side. Days turned into weeks, and Ifeoma's strength slowly returned. Each day was a step closer to the life they all hoped for. During this time, Aisha and Chidi grew even closer, their bond solidified by the trials they had faced together. One afternoon, as Ifeoma rested peacefully, Aisha and Chidi found a quiet corner in the hospital courtyard. The sun was warm, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the air. "I can't believe how far we've come," Chidi said, looking at Aisha with gratitude. "Ifeoma's recovery, finding a way out. It's all because of you." Aisha shook her head. "It's because we worked together, Chidi. You've been strong for your sister and you never gave up." Chidi smiled, a rare sight that warmed Aisha's heart. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I don't want to lose you, Aisha." Aisha felt a surge of emotion. "I feel the same way. We've been through so much, and I can't imagine my life without you now." Their hands found each other's, and for a moment, the world around them faded away. They were no longer captor and captive, but two souls who had found solace and strength in each other. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of medical appointments and paperwork. Healing Hands Nigeria continued to support Ifeoma's recovery, providing not only medical care but also counseling and rehabilitation services. Aisha and Chidi were grateful for the organization's help, and they worked hard to ensure Ifeoma's transition back to health was as smooth as possible. As Ifeoma grew stronger, Chidi and Aisha began to discuss their future. They knew they couldn't stay in Lagos forever, the memories and risks were too great. They needed a fresh start, a place where they could build a new life away from the shadows of the past. One evening, as they sat in Emeka's living room, they shared their thoughts with him. "We need to leave Lagos," Chidi said. "Start fresh somewhere else. But we don't know where to go." Emeka, who had become a close friend and confidant, nodded thoughtfully. I understand. I have a cousin in Enugu who runs a small farm. It's peaceful there and I'm sure he'd be willing to help you get settled. Aisha and Chidi exchanged hopeful glances. That sounds perfect, Aisha said. We can build a new life there, away from all this. Emeka smiled. I'll make the arrangements. You two deserve a chance at happiness. The decision was made, and soon preparations were underway for their move to Enugu. Ifeoma was thrilled at the prospect of a new start, her eyes shining with hope and excitement. On the day of their departure, Aisha and Chidi stood at the entrance of Emeka's home, their bags packed and ready. They hugged Emeka tightly, grateful for his support and friendship. Thank you for everything, Chidi said, his voice filled with emotion. Emeka smiled, clapping Chidi on the shoulder. Take care of each other, and remember, you're always welcome here. As they boarded the bus to Enugu, Aisha felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she knew that as long as they were together, they could face anything. The bus rumbled to life, and they watched as the city of Lagos faded into the distance. Aisha reached for Chidi's hand, squeezing it gently. We're going to be okay, she said, her voice filled with determination. Chidi smiled, his eyes shining with love and hope. Yes, we are. As the bus carried them toward their new life, Aisha and Chidi knew they had overcome incredible odds. Their love had blossomed in the most unlikely of circumstances, and they were ready to face whatever the future held, together. The journey to Enugu was long but filled with a sense of hope and anticipation. As the bus wound through the countryside, lush greenery and rolling hills replaced the concrete jungle of Lagos. Aisha and Chidi sat close together, Ifeoma resting against Aisha's shoulder, her eyes filled with excitement for the future. When they arrived, Emeka's cousin, Obinna, was waiting for them at the bus station. He was a tall, kind-faced man with a welcoming smile. Welcome to Enugu, he greeted them warmly. I'm Obinna. Emeka told me all about you. Come, let's get you settled. Obinna's farm was on the outskirts of the city, a peaceful haven away from the bustle. The small house they would call home was cozy, surrounded by fields of crops and a few animals. It was a stark contrast to their previous life, but it felt right. You can stay here as long as you need, Obinna said as he showed them around. There's plenty of work on the farm, and you'll find the community very welcoming. Aisha and Chidi were overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you, Obinna, Aisha said, her eyes misting. This means so much to us. Obinna smiled. We're family now. And family helps each other. The days that followed were filled with hard work and new experiences. Aisha and Chidi quickly adapted to farm life, finding joy in the simple routines. Ifeoma's health continued to improve, and she thrived in the fresh air and open spaces. The community embraced them, offering friendship and support. One evening, as they sat around a fire pit in the yard, Chidi looked at Aisha, his eyes filled with contentment. This feels like home, he said softly. Aisha nodded, her heart swelling with love. It does. We've come so far, and I'm so grateful for everything we have. Chidi reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. I never imagined I could feel this happy again. It's all because of you, Aisha. Aisha smiled, her eyes sparkling in the firelight. We did this together, Chidi. And we have so much to look forward to. Their new life was not without its challenges, but they faced them with strength and resilience. They built a routine that brought them closer together, working side by side on the farm and supporting each other in every way. Ifeoma flourished, her laughter a constant reminder of the joy they had found. As the weeks turned into months, Aisha and Chidi's bond deepened. They often talked about their dreams and plans for the future, finding solace in each other's presence. One evening, as they watched the sunset from their porch, Chidi turned to Aisha with a serious expression. "I've been thinking a lot about our future," he began. "About what I want for us. Aisha, you've changed my life in ways I can't even begin to describe. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Aisha's heart raced as she met his gaze. "Chidi, I feel the same way. You've shown me what true love and strength are." Chidi took a deep breath, his eyes filled with determination. "Aisha Adeyemi, will you marry me?" Aisha's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Yes, Chidi. Yes, I will marry you." Their embrace was filled with love and promise, the start of a new chapter in their extraordinary journey. They had found each other in the darkest of times, and now they were ready to build a future filled with light and happiness. Their wedding was a small, joyous celebration, attended by their new friends and neighbors. Ifeoma, healthy and radiant, stood by their side, her smile brighter than ever. As they exchanged vows under the open sky, Aisha and Chidi knew they had truly found their home, in each other. The honeymoon phase of their new life was blissful. The farm thrived under Chidi's hard-working hands, and Aisha found her place in the community, helping out wherever she could and learning new skills. Ifeoma continued to grow stronger, her laughter a constant joy in their home. But as the months passed, new challenges began to arise. The farm work was demanding, and the financial strain of keeping everything running weighed heavily on Chidi. A particularly harsh rainy season damaged a significant portion of their crops, and the stress began to take its toll. One evening, as they sat together in their small living room, Chidi's frustration spilled over. "I don't know how we're going to make it through this season," he admitted, his voice tense. "We've lost so much of our crop, and we barely have enough to cover the costs." Aisha reached for his hand, her touch gentle. "We'll find a way, Chidi, we always do. Maybe we can find other sources of income, or ask the community for help." Chidi shook his head, his expression troubled. "I don't want to be a burden to anyone. We need to stand on our own 2 feet." Aisha understood his pride, but she also knew they couldn't do this alone. "Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, Chidi. It's a part of being human. We've made friends here, and they care about us. Let's give them a chance to help." Reluctantly, Chidi agreed, and they reached out to their neighbors and friends. The response was overwhelming. The community rallied around them, offering not only financial support, but also labor and resources to help rebuild what they had lost. It was a humbling experience for Chidi, but it also showed him the strength of their new family. During this time, Aisha discovered a hidden talent for crafting traditional Nigerian jewelry. With the encouragement of her friends, she began selling her pieces at the local market. Her business quickly gained popularity, providing a much-needed boost to their income. One afternoon, as she set up her stall at the market, Aisha overheard a conversation that filled her with dread. A group of men were discussing recent news of a crackdown on criminals in Lagos, and one of the names mentioned was chillingly familiar. "They say Chidi's name was on the list of suspects," one man said. "I heard they're looking for him. Something about a kidnapping case." Aisha's heart raced. The past they had tried so hard to leave behind was catching up to them. She rushed home, her mind spinning with fear and uncertainty. When she found Chidi, she told him everything she had heard. "We need to leave, Chidi," she said, her voice trembling. "They're looking for you." Chidi's face paled, and he nodded slowly. "I knew this might happen. We've been running from our past, but it's always been right behind us." Aisha took his hands, her grip firm. "We'll face it together, Chidi. We need to find a way to clear your name and put this behind us once and for all. They knew the only way to truly be free was to confront their past. With heavy hearts, they decided to return to Lagos and face the consequences of Chidi's actions. It was a risky decision, but they had no other choice. Before they left, they entrusted Ifeoma to Obina's care, promising to return as soon as they could. The farewell was tearful, but they knew it was necessary for Ifeoma's safety. As they boarded the bus back to Lagos, Aisha and Chidi held hands tightly, their determination unwavering. They had come too far to let the past destroy their future. Together, they would find a way to clear Chidi's name and build a life free from fear. The journey back to Lagos was filled with tension and anxiety. They had no idea what awaited them, but they faced it with courage and hope. As they approached the city, Aisha and Chidi knew that their love and strength would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. Arriving in Lagos felt like stepping back into a storm. The bustling city was as chaotic and overwhelming as they remembered, but this time, the stakes were even higher. Chidi and Aisha knew they had to act quickly and carefully. Their first stop was at the office of Healing Hands Nigeria. Ngozi, the kind coordinator who had helped Ifeoma, welcomed them with a worried expression. "You two are brave to come back," she said, ushering them into her office. "But I understand why you did. Tell me what you need." Chidi took a deep breath, explaining their situation. "I need to clear my name. We can't keep running. Do you know anyone who can help us?" Ngozi nodded thoughtfully. "I have a contact in the police force who might be able to assist. He's trustworthy and has a reputation for being fair. I'll arrange a meeting." The following day, Ngozi introduced them to Inspector Aide, a stern but fair-looking man in his 40s. He listened to their story, his expression grave but not unsympathetic. "You're in a difficult position," Inspector Aide said. "But if you're willing to cooperate and tell the truth, I'll do my best to help you." Chidi nodded, his resolve firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to clear my name. I just want to build a life with Aisha and my sister without this shadow hanging over us." Inspector Aide agreed to investigate Chidi's case further and advised them to stay in a safe house provided by Healing Hands Nigeria while the investigation was ongoing. The waiting period was filled with anxiety and uncertainty, but Aisha and Chidi held on to their hope and faith in each other. During this time, Aisha reached out to her family, explaining everything that had happened. Her parents were initially shocked and worried, but they eventually understood and supported her decision to stand by Chidi. Weeks passed, and the investigation slowly began to yield results. Inspector Aide found evidence that supported Chidi's story, including testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed the desperate circumstances that led to his actions. They also discovered that the real criminals involved in the kidnapping had been apprehended in a separate case. Finally, the day came when Chidi was called to the police station to give his formal statement. Aisha accompanied him, holding his hand tightly as they walked into the building. Inspector Aide met them with a reassuring nod. "This is it," Chidi whispered to Aisha. "No matter what happens, thank you for standing by me." Aisha squeezed his hand. "We'll get through this, Chidi. Together." Chidi gave his statement, detailing the events that led to the kidnapping and explaining his motives. Inspector Aide's thorough investigation had built a strong case in Chidi's favor, and after hours of questioning and deliberation, the verdict was delivered. Chidi was granted clemency due to the extenuating circumstances and the fact that he had cooperated fully with the authorities. He would have to complete community service, but his record would be cleared, and he would be free to build a new life. Relief washed over them as they left the police station. It felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from their shoulders. They could finally look forward to the future without the fear of the past catching up to them. Returning to Enugu, they were welcomed with open arms by Obina and the community. Ifeoma, now healthier and happier than ever, ran to greet them with a beaming smile. The nightmare was over, and their new life could truly begin. Aisha and Chidi's bond had been tested in unimaginable ways, but it had only grown stronger. They had faced the darkness together, and emerged into the light, ready to build a future filled with hope and love. As they stood together, watching the sunset over the fields of their farm, Chidi took Aisha's hand and kissed it gently. "We did it," he whispered. "We're free." Aisha smiled, her heart full. "Yes, Chidi. We're free. And now, we can truly start our life together." The days in Enugu were brighter and more promising than ever. Aisha, Chidi, and Ifeoma settled back into their peaceful life on the farm, but with a newfound sense of security and joy. The community, knowing the full extent of their trials, rallied around them with even greater support and affection. Aisha's jewelry business flourished, drawing interest from beyond their local market. She began receiving orders from different parts of Nigeria, and her creations became symbols of resilience and hope. Chidi, with his burden lifted, threw himself into farming with renewed vigor. The crops thrived under his care, and the farm's productivity reached new heights. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching Ifeoma play with the other children, Chidi took Aisha's hand. "We've come so far, Aisha. I'm grateful for every moment we've shared, even the hard ones. They've made us who we are." Aisha smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Our love has grown stronger because of what we've been through. We've learned so much about ourselves and each other." As they sat in comfortable silence, the stars beginning to twinkle in the sky, Aisha thought about the journey they had taken. From a kidnapping born out of desperation to a love that defied all odds, their story was one of resilience, forgiveness, and transformation. A few months later, Aisha and Chidi decided to host a community celebration on their farm. It was a way to thank their friends and neighbors for their unwavering support and to celebrate their new beginning. The day was filled with laughter, music, and dancing, a testament to the strength and unity of the community. During the celebration, Chidi stood up to speak, his voice strong and clear. "I want to thank all of you for standing by us during our hardest times. Your support and kindness have shown us the true meaning of community. We are honored to be part of this family." Aisha joined him, her eyes shining with emotion. "We've learned that no matter how dark the path may seem, there is always light at the end. Our journey has taught us the power of love, forgiveness, and resilience. We are stronger together, and we will continue to grow and thrive because of each other." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the celebration, Aisha and Chidi felt a profound sense of peace. They had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged victorious. Their love had not only survived but flourished, guiding them through the darkest times and into the light. The story of Aisha and Chidi teaches us that love, resilience, and community can overcome even the most daunting challenges. In the face of adversity, it is our capacity to forgive, to seek help, and to stand by each other that defines our strength.